My name is Chris Gaffney. I'm the Executive Director of Parkinson's Support and Wellness, the sponsor of today's Spring Forum seminar, the Harvey Chayette Spring Forum. And I don't know about you, but we're very excited about the fact that we are together in person for the first time in 4 years. So thank you for coming. I know there are an awful lot of us who are tired of the 2D look. There are probably some of you who have participated in some of our PD-EDUs and or our virtual support group meetings who don't recognize me without a headset. But thanks to the Manor House, the staff here, Prestige Audio and Visual Productions, I don't have to wear a headset today. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. His name is Stuart Solomon. Stuart is the principal at Senior Care Partners, and he will be talking about housing options and how to plan for having the options that you need in terms of housing. He'll be followed by a short exercise break of about 15 minutes with Sarah Palmer from Forever Fitness. I want to thank the program committee from Parkinson Support and Wellness for putting this together. You know, we are a small organization. We have 3 part-time employees. Everything that we do, we're able to do because of volunteers. And later on today, I will try and recognize some of those volunteers. I would mention that Stuart is also a volunteer, and he works on our Steady Strides race committee and is also a sponsor of today's event. Stuart Solomon.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity for being here. Today we're going to talk about Senior Housing 101. And the goal is just to educate people on what that looks like. There are a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to do it, and it's really very individualized to you as best as we can. So with that, we'll start. So just a little introduction about me. Stuart Solomon. I was born and raised in Cincinnati. I went to Sycamore High School just down the road. I went to Ohio University, where I majored in health administration, and then after that went to Xavier and got my master's degree in health administration. So I've been in healthcare for over 10 years. I started actually as a scheduler for a in-home healthcare company, then started my administrator in training at the Seasons, became an administrator there, and then worked as an executive director of several assisted livings here in the area. And now I am the owner and operator of Senior Care Partners. So what is the right time to think about senior housing? First and foremost, safety. And there's 2 things that go with that. One is the cognitive decline side, wandering. I had a client of mine who about 6 months ago, we found her on Montgomery Road walking the street at 3 in the morning. Not good. So I talked with the daughter. We got her into the right care facility, and she's thriving. But with that, in the kind of the cognitive decline aspect of things, there's also the forgetting to eat, forgetting to drink, medication management. Those types of things are such a huge safety concern. And then from the physical safety, is your house 2 stories? Are you walking downstairs to go do your laundry? Those are all items that really can be big-time hazards for you and your loved ones as they're navigating their own home. The mental health and the social isolation. I read a stat yesterday that said you have a 30% higher rate of death in seniors who are socially isolated. So being around other people, engaging with other people. Even if you're not a big bingo player, that's okay. You still can engage, in meals. Just being around other people is such a huge advantage and really lifts a lot of spirits. And then lastly is simplification of life. I would love to not have to, change a light bulb in my house or mow the lawn or put down mulch or whatever that looks like. All those things are done for you in that senior community. So there is a lot of great advantages to senior housing. So as we go through, I want to interweave a little story just to give you some perspective. And this might be you or someone you know. But we're going to delve through to make sure that you get a better understanding of the process. And the process is never fun or easy. But hopefully, like I said today, we can learn a little bit when someone's in that situation to help navigate. So let's meet George. He's a 83, very social male, living alone in his home in Cincinnati. He's in a 2-story house with his bedroom on the 2nd floor, washer and dryer in the basement. He no longer drives and relies on friends to pick him up. Recently, his friends have been around less and less, and they're less available. I'm sure that's similar for a lot of people here. George has a daughter who helps him with some smaller items. While working, so George's daughter works and cares for him at the same time. So she sets up his medication reminders, helps with groceries, takes him to appointments. George has a history of falls due to blood pressure issues. He has diabetes that he monitors himself, takes medications in the morning and at night, but has become more forgetful has become more forgetful to take his medication on time. So those are all big, there are some red flags, certainly, as we're working with George. So what is Medicare, what is Medicaid, and what is private insurance? So with Medicaid, that is an asset-based insurance. So with that, you have to have under $2,000 of assets and make less than $2,500 a month. So for those people who have pensions or a Social Security, you have to make under that $2,500 per month. So what that is, with people that are under 65, so there are some people who do take Medicaid earlier. That is just their primary insurance. And those for 65, Medicare becomes their primary insurance, and Medicaid becomes their secondary insurance. So as we're talking further today about Medicare plans, Mike, who's going to be discussing that, we'll talk more about that. Now, Medicare, that's for all people over 65. You can take it a little earlier, but by and large, it's for people over 65. So there are 4 parts. The Part A, that's your hospital stays. Those are your doctor's appointments. Those are some home care portions. There's your Part B, which is your outpatient therapies. Some doctor's visits are covered under your Part B, but mostly that outpatient therapy. Part C is the Medicare Advantage plan. Again, Mike will really touch on that much more. And then Part D is the medications. And in the recent years, that donut hole has been closed, so they're covering more and more as we move on. Now, private insurance, that's the under 65, that's your primary insurance. Sometimes people over 65 choose to take their private insurance over Medicare if they're still working. That's obviously up to you. And again, Mike will talk about that further. And then with that as well, the private insurance is called the supplemental insurance. So that's Medicare is your primary. The rest of it would be covered through your supplemental insurance. Again, Mike will talk about that more as we're moving forward. So let's meet George again. George fell as he stepped out of the shower. He lives alone and he's unable to call anyone to make it to the phone. His daughter discovers him on the floor after she's unable to reach him. He was sent to a local hospital and EMS. So how do they qualify for their Medicare benefits? Well, you have to have a 3-day or a 3-midnight stay. You have to be admitted into the hospital. That's when your Medicare activates and you're then able to be transitioned to that rehab facility. How does a patient know which rehab to go to? Well, I would say first and foremost, the location is always the biggest thing. If you're gonna go somewhere, be as close as you can to a family member. That engagement is so critical, especially in rehab. No one wants to be in rehab, to be very honest. I don't think anyone here wants to be in rehab, but it really is such a vital part of getting back to your baseline because of the intensity of that rehab. In rehab, you're gonna get 6 days a week of PT, OT, speech therapy. Where if you were to go home, you might get 3 days of that, and it's for a half an hour. And really what the in-home, that Part B insurance is really just to maintain the new baseline that you're at, where rehab is to take you from someone who's been sitting and laying in the hospital for 3 midnights back to that new baseline or back to your old baseline as best as you can. So how do you know where to go? I think location, location, location. Also looking on the CMS website. There is a star rating that you're able to look at, and that rates based on quality of care, staffing, and their surveys. Obviously, 5 stars is better, and then it goes down from there. I do work, just in my career, I've worked with every single rehab in the city. And I've had great experiences at 3 stars, and I've had terrible experiences at 5 stars. So that's why I say location, location, location. Make sure that your family is touring as best you can at these communities, because there is a feeling of comfort when you walk in. You want to make sure that you feel comfortable with that place, because that's where you're getting, that intensive care. So skilled nursing versus long-term care. We just talked about that as you have to have your 3 midnights admitted into the hospital. It is a short-term stay. So the average length of stay today is probably 20 to 30 days. When I first started my career, we would have people for 60 days, 80 days. And that's a kind of a combination of medical technology being much better, but also Medicare trying and the insurance companies maybe trying to push people along as best they can. So the average length of stay is about 20 to 30 days. So if you are thinking about moving into an adult or a senior community, that doesn't give you a lot of time. So what the focus there is that occupational, the speech, and physical therapies. So you'll get at least one of those a day. Most of the time you're getting 2. Now this is covered by your Part A Medicare. With that, the first 20 days are covered 100%. Let's say you have Medicare as your primary and you have a supplement. And again, Mike will go into this a little bit more after me, but your Part A, that covers the first 20 days, 100%. On day 21 to 100, they cover 80%. That supplement then covers that additional 20%, and it matters the type of insurance you have as to if there's a copay, if they cover 100%, do they cover day 21 through 50, and then day 51 to 100, there's a copay. So my suggestion, if anyone is to go into rehab, is to talk to their sales and marketing, talk to their business office, just so you have a better understanding of what potential bills you'll have once you leave. So long-term care is in the same traditional nursing home setting, but this is your primary place of residence. And this would be usually, like I said, in that traditional nursing home. And why people need that long-term care, 2 reasons. One, their medical needs are more complex than an assisted living can handle. Usually that's feeding tubes, IV antibiotics or IV medications. Those are the 2 big ones, catheter care. Or in long-term care, they have to take Medicaid. If you take Medicare, you have to take Medicare or Medicaid. So with that, if those people make under that dollar threshold, Medicaid might be that option for you in a long-term care setting. I often tell people that if they are under that dollar amount and they are looking for some senior housing, oftentimes it is better just to stay where you are. That allows some continuity of care, but also that allows the community to work with Medicaid to flip over your payer source from Medicare to Medicaid, a much more simple and easy transition. George again. So George has had successful hip surgery. He goes to skilled nursing and is doing well. Like I said before, rehab consists of seeing one of 3 therapies at least 6 to 7 times per week, 6 to 7 days in the week. His daughter has noticed that he has become more forgetful after his surgery. Very common, especially once someone's been under anesthesia. He's getting up out of bed without pressing his alert button, and additionally, he's using her mother's name when talking to her. Again, there is a lot of times when someone goes through a hip surgery or any types of surgery as a senior, and going under anesthesia does cause some additional decline in some cognitive functioning. So, what are his options at discharge? Well, it all matters on what he wants to do, but the options would be go home with some in-home care, and then go potentially to an assisted living memory care, really based on his needs and his wants. My personal suggestion for anyone who is leaving rehab and going home, please bring in-home care. We don't want you to go back to the hospital. We don't want you to go back to rehab. So having someone there in the beginning, maybe the first week, the first 3 days, allows you to have that helpful hand as you're getting used to and building back up your strength as best as possible. So how does he maintain the progress that he has made? That's where we go back to that Part B therapy, that 2 to 3 times a week, where they will come to his permanent setting and work with him to make sure that he is maintaining that level of functionality. So home health care versus private duty home care. As we said, Part B covers what's called home care. That's that continuation of therapy services, usually 2, 3, 4 times a week, much shorter, less intensive in your own home. This is covered by your Part B, and there's often some copays that need to be paid. I mean, usually in the $50, $75 per visit. And then also home care does provide some additional nursing services. So a good example of that would be wound care. So if you developed a wound while you were at the hospital or in rehab, you went home, they would provide that wound care in your own home, maybe every day with a wrap, whatever the care may be. So private duty home care, that is a private pay person coming to your home. They help with ADLs. So ADLs are activities of daily living. That includes help with eating, dressing, transfer services, really anything that affects your day-to-day life. And sometimes we take for granted. They're able to help with all that, as well as light housekeeping, grocery shopping, transportation to wherever you need to go. And that schedule is determined by the client. A lot of times those places do need a 20-hour minimum, 4 hours per session. One of my really good referral sources actually with us today, right at home. They do a really, really nice job. So with that, the private pay, the average cost is about $24. I would say that in the last maybe few months that may have even gone up. The better community or the better companies usually do have some nursing, underlying nursing care. They may have a nurse on staff. And why that I think is better is because as your needs change, they can be there to care plan much better, much more effectively. So it may range even up to the $30 to $35 an hour range. So what is independent living? Independent living essentially is like going back to college. It's a dorm. It's an apartment living style. They may have activities. They have some great amenities, and it's usually full service dining, great common areas, fitness space, incredible transportation to all sorts of activities. I know there are some communities that go to trips to Florida or Europe. And it's really, but the activities are geared towards our seniors. And with that, the staffing of an independent living is really no care staff. They may have somebody there 24 hours as a front desk person, but there is no care provided. So if you were to need any care and stay in that independent living, you need to bring in your own care. So with that, an apartment usually costs around $3,000 a month. There are some that are much more, there are some that are less. Again, it just depends on your financial needs and location and where you want to be. There we go. Assisted living. So assisted living is a much more, it really has evolved in the last 15 to 20 years. I remember when I worked at the Seasons, for example, their assisted living when it first started was a very dark hallway in the basement. Well, that has definitely changed. They're now beautiful communities, and they're very much like independent living communities in terms of the amenities. What is different is that ADL care, is that 24-hour-a-day nurse and aides that are on staff to meet your needs. What they can do is all based on schedule. Can your needs be met on a schedule? Every 2 hours would be the best that they could do. And again, we're talking what their care providers provide is that ADL support. Do you need help in the morning, getting out of bed, getting dressed? Do you have TED hose that need to be put on? Do you just need a little bit of extra support in the morning, in the afternoon? Someone helping in the shower. Those types of items are really more that assisted living style. Now, how the payments work is there's always a rent and there's always a level of care. With the rent, you get housekeeping, 3 meals a day, any of the activities, transportation services, that's all built into the rent. What the care costs are that ADL support. Are we coming in 3 times a day to help with whatever you need? Are you taking medication 5 times a day? I know with Parkinson's and some of the medications that need to be taken, they need to be taken on time every few hours. So as you need more, that care cost moves up. So like I said, the average care cost for the apartment style is about $4,500. The average level of care is about $1,000. And so in total, about $5,500 to $6,000 a month for that. Memory care. Memory care is usually a specific area within an assisted living. These are locked areas to prevent residents from, or to keep them safe as best as possible. We often, as we touched on as to why a assisted living or senior housing would be appropriate is that wandering issue. We want to make sure that everyone is safe. But what I think I can liken a memory care to is a cruise ship. Very small apartments, because the goal is to get out and engage. A lot of times there's a big open area where the activities, the meals, everything just kind of happens to you. So what I say to people is, can mom or dad, can they say, hey, it's 10:30, I need to get to bingo? If they can't do that, that's that support that a memory care would provide to allow them to be engaged and limit that social isolation, even within assisted living. As I worked in many of them, we'd always notice that there'd be 3 or 4 people kind of sitting in the front of the community. And why they sit there is because they come down to breakfast, but they can't navigate themselves back to their room or to an activity. So they sit in the front lobby and just watch people go by. That's a really good indication that there's some engagement that they're lacking. And that's what a memory care would provide and support them, is that as they sit, the activities, the engagement, everything that's specialized to someone with cognitive decline comes to them. And it's a really good way for people to get that engagement. So there are no staff requirements in memory care, but usually it's about 1 aide to 8 residents. That's the industry standard. Whereas in assisted living, it's about 1 to 30. And that's just because the needs vary in assisted living, where in memory care, the needs are much higher. The costs for this is usually an all-inclusive rate. And why they do that is because someone can need their level of care is here today, tomorrow it's up here, the next day it's there. It's so hard to be able to calculate what their needs are on a day-to-day basis that a lot of times it's just all-inclusive. It allows people to just get the care that they need and find that engagement that they certainly deserve. So the average cost is about $6,500 to $7,000 a month. So if any financial planners out there, tell your clients to save your money. That's my advice to people. So George has hit his plateau in therapy. So what does plateauing mean? So plateauing, and I'll use the example of steps per day. So George is walking 50 steps on Monday, 45 on Tuesday, 51 on Wednesday, and then 47 on Thursday? I think so. Thursday. And so he's about 50. We're not seeing, hey, on one day he's walking 20, the next day 30, the next day 40, 50, so on and so forth. So that's that plateau. They're not making any gains in their abilities. So during the discharge meeting, the social worker strongly suggests that George go to an assisted living after discharge, and then gives his daughter a list of assisted livings to look at. So she must visit these communities to find the right place for Dad. On average, people look at 5 to 7 communities when they're searching. Each visit is about an hour. I've been on tours where it's taken 3 hours, and I've been on tours that have taken about 20 minutes. So it is about an hour. So what should someone look for in a senior community? It's about 3 things. And I use this when I talk to my clients every day. Location, finances, and care. Those are the big 3. And then with that, we may have to sacrifice location to meet the other 2, care and finances. That's the big thing. So what I do in my role is I help people navigate that to then say, okay, we've met these 3 criteria. How does it feel when you're walking into the community? It's about a feeling. And then what does someone need to move into that senior community? We'll touch on that here in 1 second. So what to look for? Know your must-haves. Know the budget. Budget is big. That jumps into what's called the Medicaid waiver. So there's private pay. All assisted livings are private pay. But there are some communities that after a certain amount of private pay will take what's called the Medicaid waiver. And what that does is allow someone to stay in an assisted living facility and receive that Medicaid payment. The community receives that Medicaid payment, allowing them to stay where they are. Now, let's say there's 100 communities. About 25 of those, so a fourth of them, will take the Medicaid waiver. So it's really important to really know your finances. Cleanliness of the building. There's a difference between being new and being clean. I have walked into several communities that are brand new, but I still see dust everywhere, or trays that are still in the hallway. So there's a difference between being clean and being well kept and being new. Always do a lunch tour. That way you can see people. That's the best way to see people. That's the best way to see any engagement between the staff and the residents and the residents, and the staff and the staff. Make sure that you're looking for what they look like. Is there food from breakfast still on the residents? Are the aides looking disheveled? Do they have proper uniforms? And then the friendliness as well on the staff. I have given many tours in my day, and as I'm walking down the hall, you'll get the staff just scatter. I would just tell people, I say, please just say hi. That's all I need from you, is just to say hi. I think that's just indicative. Those things are all indicative of the culture. And what that really means is, yeah, things will go wrong. That's okay. But how do those communities change, and how do they meet those challenges as they arise? Diverse activities. Activities should be about 7 to 9 activities per day. Not all activity director led. There are some, we find a bridge game. We'll have bridge set up in the corner, or whatever card game that you like, or there's puzzles, or there's some engagement that doesn't need to be activity director led, that could be resident led. Make sure there are a diverse amount of activities. And then reviews. Reviews are not always the most telling of things when you are looking for senior housing. Usually what happens is, on a review, like all things, is you get the people who love it and the people who hate it. And you always get a disgruntled employee who says, this place is the absolute worst. I can't believe I worked here. They are the worst place I've ever been. They also neglect to tell you that they were late every day for a month, or that they just didn't help the residents, or they weren't timely enough, or they were just bad employees. They usually forget to mention that. So reviews are always something that we want to be mindful of, but not always take a lot of stock in. What do I need to move in? Now, again, I harp on budget, but also know your payer source. There are some people that get long-term care insurance. Make sure that you have contacted that company. Make sure you've started the claim. And for those helping either their spouse or maybe a parent, make sure that you're on the policy, that you can call and ask questions. What has happened in the past is I've had a resident who came in independent and had a stroke. Were unable to make any decisions, were not able to articulate much of anything, and the daughter was essentially locked out of their long-term care insurance policy. Couldn't ask questions, had to go through a rather difficult process of getting that done. Additionally, from a payer source perspective, there's an additional payer source for veterans out there. So if you have served during time of war, you can receive some benefits. It's usually about $2,700 a month, and then a spouse can also receive that as well if that veteran has passed. So make sure that you do have your discharge paperwork from that. There are several companies out there that can help navigate that. But as someone who has served during time of war, please make sure that you're looking out for that. Now, you do have to be under a certain asset threshold. I think it's $130,000 of total assets. But hey, $2,700 a month is not chump change. So utilize that as best as you can. Move-in documents, the most important thing to move into a community. These are all needed by the state of Ohio. Trust me, the state of Ohio looks through all of these documents to make sure that they're there, to make sure that the admission process is completed. A history and physical, that must be signed by a physician. Usually what happens when you are in rehab, the doctor that is on site will just sign it. It's very easy. If you're moving from home into a community, make sure your doctor gets it done timely. There have been many times in my past where admission has been delayed because the doctor won't sign, or he's on vacation, or whatever that looks like. Power of attorney, make sure you have copies of that. Living will, and your DNR paperwork, a signed agreement, and then a face sheet to determine who to call in emergency. All that paperwork will be given to you as you move in from that specific community. Furniture, it's a big question. Your own versus buying new. I always say, bring as much of your things as you can. It creates that home-like environment for you. This is a big transition for a lot of people, and we want to make sure that it goes off as best as possible, and a lot of that is feeling comfortable in your own space. So if you are going to bring as much stuff, please bring as much stuff as you can. Now, a lot of places can't fit that king bed that you've had for however many years with the humongous bed and you got the pillow, the whole thing. That usually doesn't fit. So make sure you are bringing the right amount of stuff to make sure that the room is usable. We don't want anyone tripping and falling, but also feeling as home-like as possible. Now, some people will just buy all new stuff, and that's great. You go to Value City, you can literally buy an entire apartment. And people do that. They have it sent, it's shipped, it's put together, and their loved one just walks in and boom. Now, if someone was to do that, my suggestion is to bring some pictures, bring some artwork, bring a duvet cover that reminds someone of home, that you just have that little touch of home as much as possible. Clothing. This is the most difficult thing to think about. It's your closet is not going to be the same. Just telling you that right now. My suggestion is to bring about 2 to 3 weeks of clothing. I say that to everybody, and no one ever listens to me. So, you might bring that 2 to 3 weeks of clothing. You might bring 2 to 3 weeks of kind of spring, summer stuff, fall, winter stuff, and then be able to intermix as you move through the seasons. Please don't bring too much, especially anyone who has cognitive decline. When you open your closet and you just see all that stuff, it can be extremely overwhelming for residents. So in most cases, less is more. And then the right expectations. Making sure you understand that in any type of senior housing, it's people helping people. It will never be perfect. But, and we jump back to that culture, making sure that that culture feels comfortable, that the connection is there, because the best communities, problems happen, they're able to solve them and move forward. That's the right expectation. My last piece of advice is if you're moving in a spouse, or you're moving with your spouse, or you're moving a loved one, get the nurse's cell phone. Nothing ever happens between 9 and 5. Nothing. I swear. It's always at 3 in the morning. And also at the same time, you have a question. Well, you never think of it until you're laying in bed at 11 o'clock and you need to ask a question, or there's something that's come up. Make sure you have that cell phone. Make sure you can ask those questions. Make sure that you can communicate thoroughly with the staff to make sure that it's not, if something was to go wrong, we're not pounding our fists on the table, but working together to make sure that that really has there's been a conclusion to that. So with that, just a little bit about us is we help people navigate senior housing. This is We are 100% free to you guys, and we are a resource. So if there's anyone who needs that or thinking about that, please come see me. I'll be in the exhibitor area, happy to answer any questions. We are free. We do, to you guys, we do get a referral fee from those communities or the services that we provide. So with that, my contact information, any questions for me? That's a great question. Selfishly, I would say call me, but really I think at the end of the day, it is just going and seeing. And I think a lot of it does come from personal experience or people you know, but with the understanding that nothing is perfect. They won't broadcast, hey, we take Medicaid. They don't really want someone who has Medicaid because that hurts their financials. But it's asking those questions, having a better understanding from being here to say, hey, what does this look like? And I think a lot of it has to do with the feel that you get. You can really tell very quickly once you walk in, like I said, hey, is there food on people's shirts? Or, hey, does it look like Mrs. Smith has worn the same outfit for 3 days? I think you get a lot of knowledge and understanding based on just the observations that you make throughout the day. Now, the financial piece will be something different. Just be mindful that it's probably going to be $5,000 to $6,000 a month, at least to start. There are some different places that are a little less, and there are some places that are more. I'd say if it's a newer community, just in general, it's going to be on the higher end. If it's an older community, it'll be on the lower end. I'll use a good example. There are 2 places right down the street from here. They're literally almost next to each other. They're a mile apart. One is brand new. They're about $7,000 a month. One is actually right across the street from here. They've been here for about 20 years. The place that's been here around about 20 years usually tend to be lower, and they tend to usually take Medicaid. So just kind of keeping that in mind as you're going through. They are inspected, absolutely. So to get that CMS, a similar CMS report, they do have to keep it on. They have to keep the latest survey on site. So you can ask for it. It should be behind the desk. It might not be the most telling, but it is there. And I think if you can see that there's a pattern of, hey, your admissions paperwork isn't up to snuff. Again, that goes back to culture. Are they detail-oriented enough to meet mom's complex needs? Right. So the question is does hospice can hospice allow people to stay longer? The answer is oftentimes yes. I think it depends on the specific person. What happens with hospice is you can go on hospice, really at any time, just as long as you have a diagnosis that is uncurable. And there are certain criteria that go into that. Probably about 3 years ago, Medicare changed the way that they did that. It used to just be failure to thrive. And we'd put everybody on hospice because it provides a little extra care. In the beginning, when you are relatively high functioning or higher functioning, it just might be a shower and some additional support. As you need more, they kind of take over from that assisted living to provide that more and more care on top of what you're getting from the assisted living. So I would say yes, but not in all circumstances. Just depends on how quickly they decline. And if they are declining but plateau, and the everyday needs are very high, and hospice isn't coming in 24 hours a day, there might be some discussion. My suggestion, honestly, would just to have a meeting with the DON or the Health and Wellness Director, the hospice rep, and just make sure that everyone knows who's doing what as best as possible. No, it's all Medicare. It's all Medicare criteria. Through your Part A insurance. Yeah. So it's all Medicare. Yeah, which is lovely. But I mean, I've had people who have been on for 2 years, and they just slowly start to decline. They meet the criteria, the medical criteria for hospice. Hospice doesn't mean end of life. It can really be supportive for an extended period of time. And then as someone is declining in their final days, they're there 24 hours. So they really take over completely from that community. Yep, exactly. They just come in and support additionally. No, it would be an outside person. Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this will be addressed later, but that transition to the Medicare waiver.
Medicaid waiver? Yeah, I get it confused too, don't worry.
Yeah, can you address how that happens? Just you spend your
Yeah, so you have to spend your money on that person's care. So you have to liquidate all assets, so a house, and that's usually a big thing, is the house is the biggest asset that you have. So what I've done with a lot of people is they have enough money to maybe cover the first couple months, and then they sell the house quickly, take the chunk of money, obviously contact your financial planner to maybe help elongate that amount of money, but that money has to be spent on that person's care. And there are some rules behind that, but as they're transitioning to the Medicaid waiver, usually calling just Council on Aging, and they'll kind of start you with the process. But you just need to make sure that, again, I'll use the house example. The house is $200,000, making sure that you're very, very detailed with, okay, this $200,000 is for mom, and making sure that you're documenting where the money is going to show, here are the receipts, here are the invoices for the assisted living, and then once you have a certain amount of money, once you've hit that threshold, then transitioning over to that. And it's usually pretty simple with the Council on Aging's help. If you have an attorney that is an elder care attorney, and I know we have one later today that may be able to address that a little more in detail, I would suggest using that attorney just to make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's. Good? All right. Thank you, everybody. If anyone has any questions, please come visit. Happy to answer. Thank you.
As is our tradition, in between speakers, we get up and move, because moving is important. And to lead us in exercise for the next 15 minutes or so is Sarah Palmer from Forever Fitness. I know many of you know her and work with her. I'm going to see if we can move this podium straight back a little bit, and we'll get set to go.
How's everyone doing? Can everyone hear me okay? All right, first thing, make sure you space yourself out a little bit so you don't hit anyone, because we may be reaching. And let's sit towards the front of your chair so you're not leaning against the back of the chair, and you have your feet, let's have them a little bit wider than the legs of your chair. So we're sitting up nice and tall. Let's see that good posture. Let's everybody start with just a nice inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Let's leave those arms down at your sides and let's shrug the shoulders up, press them down, relax. Let's do that with our head. Head up as high as you feel comfortable going, and head down to the floor. And come back to center. Let's repeat that one more time. Shoulders up, shoulders down, back to center, head up, head down, back to center. Let's take those shoulders in, pull them forward, and then squeeze them back together. Feel that squeeze. Relax them. Let's take your head to the right as far as you can. and to the left as far as you can. Back to center. Let's repeat that one. Shoulders in, shoulders back, back to center, head turn right, head turn left, back to center. Very nice. Now we're just going to roll the shoulders back. So just let those arms hang, and we're going to go up, back, down. Leave them down like your shoulders are in your back pocket. Hold it there, and let's drop your right ear to your right shoulder and your left ear to your left shoulder. Come back to center. Let's try that shoulder roll again. Come forward, up, back in your back pockets, right ear to right shoulder, and left ear to left shoulder, and come back to center. Very nice. Now let's bring your legs in so they're about hip width apart, or kind of railroad track apart, and we're going to swing your arms. So we want to swing them nice and big. I want you to count with me so I hear your voices. We're going to count backwards from 10. Here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone open your arms and give yourself a hug. Open up and give yourself a hug. Open and hug. Open and hug. One more. Open and hug. Very nice. Let's circle the arms back. So a backward arm circle. And then to wake you up, I want you to clap loud twice. Circle back. Clap twice. Circle back. Clap. Circle back. Clap. One more. Circle back and clap. Very nice. Let's get those legs wide again, wider than the legs of your chair. And we're going to reach down and say down, and reach up and say up. And I want your eyes to follow the hands as well. So eyes go with the hands. Here we go. Down, up. Down, up. Louder. Down, up. Down, up. One more. Down and up. Hands right here. Let's push, pull, out and in. And let's say what we're doing as we do it. Here we go. Push, pull, out, in. Push, pull, out, in. Push, pull, out, in. Two more. Push, pull, out, in. That's it. Push, pull, out, and in. Very nice. Let's put those two together. Down, up, push, pull, out, in. And we're going to say what we're doing as we do it with those nice, strong voices. Here we go. Down, up, push, pull, out, in. Down, up, push, pull, out, in. Down, up, push, pull, out, in. Down, up, push, pull, out. One more. Down, up, push, pull, out, and in. Very nice. Let's bring your legs in a little bit to that railroad track width. Hands up. We're going to tap 4 times your hand to the opposite knee. So let's tap 1, 2, 3, and 4. Arms down. We're going to go into a step jack. So right leg step out. Clap either overhead or in front if you have shoulder issues in front. Come back. Then on the left, 2, together, 3, together, 4, together. Now we're going to do a full jump jack. Both arms and legs out and up and in. 3 more. Out, in, 3, in, 4, and in. Let's try that again from the top. Tapping for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Step jacks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Full jumping jack. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, tapping. 2, 3, 4. Step jack. 1, 2, 3, 4. Full jumping jack. 1, 2, 3. One more time. Tapping. 1, 2, 3, 4. Step jack. 1, 2, 3, 4. Full jumping jack. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very nice. Take a breath. Hopefully your heart rate's up. Right hand, I want you to tap the opposite back of your chair. We're going to tap, we're going to call this right high. Then we're going to take your left hand low. Right high, tapping the chair back, and left low, tapping your foot or whatever's low. Right high, left low. Right high, left low. 2 more. Right high, left low. Right high, left low. Come back to center. Let's do the other side. Left high, right low. Left high, right low. You got it. Left high, right low. 2 more. Left high, right low. And left high, right low. Come back to your get ready position. We're going to do those alternating. So right high, left low, left high, right low. Got it? Here we go. Right high, left low, left high, right low. Good. Right high, left low, left high, right low. One more time. Right high, left low, left high, right low. And back to your get ready position. Let's bring our legs in and we're going to get ready to step. We're going to step a whole 90 degrees. So we're going to step right, right, then step middle, middle, then step left, left, and middle, and middle. But when we step right, I want you to name any sport. When we come in the middle, we're going to count. When we step left, I want you to name any color. Sports, counting, colors. Okay? Here we go. Right, right, name a sport. Middle, middle. 1. Left, left, color. Middle, middle. Right, right. Middle, middle. 3. Left, left. Middle, middle. Right, right. Middle, middle. Right, right. Middle, middle. Right, right. Middle, middle. Left, left. Middle, middle. One more each. Right, right. Middle, middle. Left, left. Middle, middle. Very nice. All right, feet wide. Everybody take your right hand, reach right forward. Come back to center. Right side. Center. Right back. Center. Left arm forward. Center. Left side. Center. Left back. Center. Again, right forward. Center. Right side. As far as you can reach. Right back. Center. Left forward. Center. Left side. Center. Left back. Center and hold it. I can call any of those, and I want you to reach there and come back as fast as you can, okay? Right forward. Left side. Right back. Right forward. Left forward. Right side. Right back. Left back. Left left forward, right side, left side, left back, and relax. Nice job. Woo, you guys are fast. Okay, we're going to talk about vowels and consonants. If I say vowel, I want you arms up. If I say consonant, cross your arms. Vowel, consonant. Vowel, consonant. Vowel, consonant. All right, you've got it. We're going through the alphabet. We're going through the alphabet, okay? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, can be either one, Z. All right, it's April Fool's Day. Happy April Fool's Day. We're going to do that by spelling out April Fool's Day, okay? I'm going to say the letter, and I want to see if you remember. I'm not going to do it. A, P, R, I, L, S, F, O, O, L, D, A, Y. Nice job. So not crazy hard, but it makes you think a little bit. All right, I think I'm almost out of time, so we're just going to do 1 minute. Okay, we're going to use it. Finger stepping. Index finger, middle finger, ring finger, pinky, while we step to the right. So we're going to do index finger, stepping right, come back. Middle finger, stepping left, come back. Ring finger and pinky. One more time like this. Index, together, middle, together, ring, together, pinky, together. Opposite arm and leg. So if I step with the right, I'm going to finger step with the left. If I step with the left, I'm going to finger step with the right, okay? Little crazy. So we've got index, middle, ring, and pinky. Index, middle, ring, and pinky. One more time. Index, middle, ring, and pinky. Very nice. Nice job. Let's get those legs wide, and we're just going to finish up here with a little posture and breathing. Let's everyone keeping your back flat. Lean forward with a nice exhale. Inhale, sit up tall and reach those arms back and turn your head to the right. Come back and lean forward with that exhale. Inhale, sit up tall, reaching back, turn your head to the left. One more time each. Exhale, forward. Inhale, sit up tall, reach back, head right. Exhale, forward. Inhale, sit up tall, reach back, head to the left. Come back to center. All right, I'm done with you. Hopefully I woke you up a little bit. If anyone has any questions, we have a table, Forever Fitness, and we do have some free classes we're offering in April, so we have sign-up sheets out there if anybody would like to try one of our classes for free. Thank you.
We have from the law practice of Dennison Keller, Ava Hager, who is an attorney with the firm, and they specialize in elder law, and This will be the subject of her discussion. I'll let her give her bona fides, but if you will, Ava Hager, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. It's such our pleasure to be here today, and to those online on this windy, blustery 1st of April. So I am Ava Hager. I am an attorney with the firm, and we are going to talk about the basics of elder law with a smattering of Medicaid built in. So something that I think is important for this entire group as we journey through our life. So let's get started. All right, so anybody looking at the slide, can you tell me what the things are that the traditional elder lawyer does? Wills, trusts, estates, things like that. Those all have in common money, right? We're looking at protecting assets. We're looking at protecting things. But have we really done our jobs if we're not looking at your quality of life? When we talk to any of our clients, we talk about the elder care continuum. What is the elder care continuum? Well, it's just life. We're all on it, whether we want to be or not. But we have different stages in the elder care continuum. Now, most of you are probably at home with full functioning, and you are having low costs of care, not really any worries there. And so there's no real reason to discover the world behind the curtain, because things are going great. But, much like Evel Knievel here, we all have a hope. And what is that hope? That hope is that we skip this entire conversation, we don't have to listen to that boring elder law attorney talk, and that we crash over at the grave without ever having to think about any of this. And if I am going to preach one thing today, it is that those who don't plan might suffer a bit of a problem if they crash somewhere in the middle. We are a life care planning firm. What is life care planning? Again, the traditional role of the elder law attorney is to make an estate plan for you, to prepare for after you have left this world. And right now, many of you may be in the retirement plan era of, what am I going to do with this newfound freedom that I have as I have left the working world? Those who crash in the middle, though, learn to meet a new challenge, and that challenge is, what happens when your function decreases? What happens when you might need a little help at home? Or what happens when it's maybe not safe to be at home anymore? What happens when things go even further than that? When independence is achievable, but in some type of facility, right? Then you start looking at increased costs with those losses of function. Then you start looking at increased needs for ways to pay for that care that you need. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to prepare to help you bridge that gap, to help you swim over the sharks, so to speak, of what you might be facing. Life care planning is a holistic way to practice law, and I love it because in my old world, I had a whole multidisciplinary team that helped me serve my clients' needs. And in this world, I have that as well. Back there taking a picture of me is Lisa Titus, one of our elder care coordinators. She's got extra folders if any of you have needs of those. My presentation is in the folder, so you can take all of this with you. But Lisa is the special sauce, and our other elder care coordinators, to what our firm does for our clients. We help families navigate the care maze as you're moving through that elder care continuum. Now, sure, we do documents, we do the law stuff, but that's not the exciting stuff. The exciting stuff is, oh no, my loved one is facing a discharge from the hospital to a skilled nursing facility. And yes, okay, that's fine, but what happens after that? Will my loved one be able to go home? Will my loved one require additional care in the home if we go home? Will my loved one not be able to reside in the home safely anymore? Where are we going to go? What's the best place? What's the best place for our finances? What if your loved one is in care and there's a change in care circumstances. I was just having a conversation with a lovely woman before the presentation. We have elder care coordinators that jump right in, right? And they help families navigate those shark-infested waters. So, obviously, it's a multidisciplinary team approach. Now, you'll see Dennison and I on the side, we're the boring suits. Molly, Myrnie, Debbie, Brittany, and Lisa and Leanne, they're what makes our firm tick. We talk through with each client the concept of, okay, where are we at in the continuum? What do we feel is the next step on the journey? How do we prepare you for an emergency crash on that journey? And how can we make your life and your care good throughout? We're the confluence of law and care, so that you can succeed through that journey. Now, here's the part that you really came for, which is, what do I need, Ava? How do I really make this journey the best for myself and for my loved ones? Now, you need 2 documents, preferably 3, and those are your healthcare advance directives, right? Your healthcare power of attorney and your living will, and your financial power of attorney. Now, I'm sure many of you in this room have these documents, but we're going to have a bit of a discussion as to what they are, how they work, and what you need to look for in your existing documents. So, healthcare powers of attorney, those of you in the care industry, I am sure, are very familiar with the concept of it is a document that names a person to make healthcare decisions for you when you can't, okay? Now, it's not always a life and death decision. It can be as simple as, I'm going to transport you to a different facility, right? But remember, this goes into effect even if you are just in a temporary state of unconsciousness. You need to have someone to make those decisions. And a lot of people are like, well, Ava, I have that person. My spouse is named. I'm good, right? A lot of people don't think through the concept of, well, what happens after my partner is gone, right? Maybe there's one kid as a backup, but do you have multiple backups? Have you checked on that recently? Take a look at that document and make sure that the persons you've named are still the persons that you would trust to make the decision to let you go into surgery. Then there's the living will, right? The living will is where you, the patient, are telling the doctor what you want done if you are at the end of your life. It takes the point of view that you do not want to be kept going if you are at a point of terminal illness and or a permanent unconscious state. So everyone's like, Ava, I want to make my own decisions. And don't worry, right? The living will only comes into effect when, again, you can't make your wishes known. But for a lot of people, that gives grace to their loved ones, right? They make the decision for themselves. It helps one pass with dignity. And so they're taking that decision perhaps off of a child. Now, it's important to know that that living will trumps the healthcare power of attorney, right? Because you yourself are the patient. You yourself are saying, Doc, this is what I want done at the end of my life. Most important is a strong financial power of attorney, right? Now, this is a document that takes effect during your lifetime. It's live and hot if you make it so. A lot of people have springing powers of attorney, and those have a role to play, but in real life, when you're not able to handle your own finances, do you really want your child to have to go to a doctor to have you declared incapacitated? And what's in it for the doc, right? Hashtag lawsuit, right? No one wants to be in a position where they need to use the document, but there's a barrier to entry. So take a look at your old financial power of attorney and think, is this really what my child or my spouse needs to take action for me? Okay? That being said, you are giving away the keys to your castle. You are letting someone act in your name. So we're not just saying willy-nilly give all these powers to everyone. What we're saying is think carefully about who you might have named and whether or not they need the powers that you're going to give them. So standard powers in a financial power of attorney include the power to bank for you, right? The power to write checks, to sell real estate, to deal with your investments, to borrow money. But maybe you got a financial power of attorney in your 40s, right? Maybe it doesn't have all the powers that you need. Or maybe, like this one, it's just way too general, okay? When you're a financial institution and you're looking at those powers of attorney, you want to know that the person giving that power really thought about what they were giving away. If I'm a banker looking at this, I'm going, all reasonable to do and perform each and everything whenever requested. I want some more specificity. So the state of Ohio does you a solid by putting a wonderful statutory power of attorney in its own laws. And we see a lot of these in our practice, all right? But it's kind of hard to use them correctly. Now, if you're looking at this and you're seeing, oh, okay, actions requiring express authority to create a trust, to make a gift, to create or change beneficiary designations, you're thinking, okay, if I just print this out and sign it, I'm good to go, right, Ava? Well, no, that's not right. Because what you're not looking at is the paragraph above it, which says, unless expressly authorized and initialed by me in the special instructions part of this power of attorney does not give those powers. Now, there's an excellent public policy reason behind that, right? We don't want to just give those powers willy-nilly to, the son-in-law that maybe has a problem with gambling, right? You don't want him to be able to gift to himself, probably, right? And so we don't put that in the generalized statutory power of attorney. But people in an emergency are just looking for, okay, I got to get a bill paid, right? I'll fill this out, I'll do it myself, and I'll do it correctly. Take a look at what you've got. Now, I've talked about the power to gift, the power to handle your retirement accounts, the power to create a trust for you, the power to self-deal, right? To give to the agent to give to themselves. We don't want to give that to the gambling son-in-law. The power to appoint an authorized representative for a Medicaid application. These are the powers that we, as the lawyers, are talking with the client about and saying, hey, these are really useful powers to you. And I'll talk more about that in the Medicaid portion of my presentation. But you've got to give them carefully. And you've only wanting to give them to the people that you trust, all right? We will talk a little bit about gifting in that Medicaid context. But what you want to do is have a conversation with your lawyer about your documents before that emergency takes place. Because I can't tell you how many families come into our office and it's like, well, okay, I've looked at the document that you have. At this point, the elder is not able themselves to execute a new document, and it just doesn't have the power to gift, right? We cannot go back and fix it at this point. So again, here's the lawyer saying, plan ahead, plan for the worst. I know it's not fun to think about. I know it's uncomfortable to have those conversations with your children, with your loved ones, right? But in part, that's what we do. We're facilitating those tough family conversations of, if I look like I'm going into long-term care, right, how do I make sure the documents have the power so that the healthier spouse can do what needs done, so that that eldest daughter can do what needs done? So without that strong financial power of attorney, what happens? You end up in a guardianship, okay? And a guardianship is a court process, and thank God we have it, right? It's appropriate. A court is watching everything that gets into the estate and out of the estate. So it's an ongoing, cumbersome process. Everything is public. You can go to the probate court website and noodle around, and everything is controlled. Wouldn't it be easier to have your loved one or your family member doing that for you? And the answer is yes. but you need to have that strong financial power of attorney in place. What do we need to sign that strong financial power of attorney, Ava? Well, the elder needs to know the nature and scope of what they're doing, right? You need to be able to understand that that gifting power can be used for good. That gifting power can be used to protect assets for the family, make sure it doesn't go all to the facility. That gifting power can be used to give a house to a caregiver that has stayed in the home with the parent for 2 years. That gifting power can be used to deal with maybe a Medicaid penalty that a family didn't expect. But that the principal needs to understand, hey, Susie has the power to sign that deed to transfer the house to herself, to take money out of my pocket, okay? And so you have to understand the nature and the scope of the positive aspects of the document and the dangerous aspects of the document. What about dealing with retirement accounts, changing beneficiary forms? You've looked at all your retirement accounts recently, haven't you? I know you've all been just raring to go with checking your beneficiaries. Well, that lawyer said, check your beneficiary forms. I bet you filled them out like me, in your 30s, in your 40s, when you switched that job and you moved that IRA to the rollover company. Were your family circumstances the same? What if there's something that happens to you and your agent needs to change those forms to make up for something that's changed since that first designation that you made? If that agent's your eldest daughter and she doesn't have the power to self-deal, then sure, she can change the beneficiary forms to her brother and her sister, but she can't change it to herself. She can't treat herself equally to her siblings. So, to quote a great comic book, with great power comes great responsibility, right? I'm not saying these are the right choices for your family, but I am saying you should have the conversation about what powers would be appropriate to have and who you want to give them to. So, let's talk a little bit more about Medicaid. We always like to say keep your eye on the Medicaid ball. And why? Because it's really complex, all right? Medicaid we often think about as the three-headed monster, and that's in our office. And that's not to say that the people that administer it are terrible. No, they're good public servants, right? I was in public service. I admire them. That being said, right, it is still a bear to deal with. A bear, or a three-headed Godzilla. So what do we think of as Medicaid in the context of elder law? We think of Passport, which is Medicaid for the home. We think of the assisted living waiver, which is Medicaid in assisted living facilities. And of course, the traditional nursing home Medicaid. And I'll talk about each of those in turn. Passport is a program that allows an elder, once qualified, to get up to 40 hours of care in the home, right? That's great for couples. That's great for if there is a child maybe living with the family and they can handle sort of nights and weekends. That helps a family stretch their existing resources over time by paying less for in-home care. But there are some hoops that you have to jump through, all right? If we want to have that family caregiver, they have to train through Medicaid and be certified. Again, it doesn't quite help without extra support, so it's not an ideal program for single people. And it's sometimes difficult, especially in rural areas, to find providers. So we help families know what providers are accepting of Passport in their area, and we help families work through any issues that they might have with their care providers if they occur. But like all Medicaid programs, you have to qualify from an income perspective, from a level of care perspective, and from an asset perspective. More on that later. But in this situation, a doctor has to say, okay, you are at the level of need for services where you could be in a nursing home. What about that? Well, that means you need help with at least 2 activities of your daily living. So, help with feeding, dressing, bathing, toileting, continence, or transferring from bed to chair. Assisted living. Great. Ava, there's a program that helps us pay for a stay in assisted living. There is. However, there's a catch. Most facilities here locally don't accept the waiver just from jump, right? That wouldn't work for their business model, and I respect that. So what we're helping you look for is facilities that will accept it over time. Often, here locally, that's 2 years of private pay that you know mentally, I'm going to have to pay for this before I can roll to the waiver as a payor source. And again, to cite a conversation that I had earlier with another wonderful attendee, you're not necessarily guaranteed that that Medicaid bed is going to be available for you when you get to that point. So, how do you know what facilities you're likely to be able to stay with? How do you know what to do if you suddenly get that notice of, oh, I'm sorry, we're not going to have a bed for you on the nursing side? That's where, again, those elder care coordinators are the special sauce of the life care planning process. And then finally is traditionally what we think of as Medicaid in the nursing home. So let me do some myth busting here, all right? Every Ohio facility, right, accepts Medicaid or can accept Medicaid. And it's a myth, right, that Medicaid facilities are the worst facilities. Again, it's just a matter of accessing that bed within the facility of your choosing, okay? And that's where we get to, they can limit the number of Medicaid residents that they accept. So, how do we find that good facility? How do we find that facility that we think is going to be able to have that bed for your loved one? If it's a crisis, if we need it the week after next, Lisa's making those calls, Debbie's making those calls. And based on their knowledge of the industry and based on their contacts, because they're finding these for clients every day, that's what our firm helps your family do. Now, we talked about the finances briefly, and now I know I can see your eyes glazing over already. We're back to finances. But this is really important stuff because it's not just your level of care, it's what you have and what you make. Medicaid requires you to put any excess income you have into something called a qualified income trust. All right? If your income exceeds $2,523, right? Any extra income you have has to go into this box, so to speak. Okay? All I want you to think about it is as a tool that allows you to qualify for Medicaid. But I can't tell you how many families come to us and they're like, Ava, Medicaid says we need a QIT. How do we create one? Okay? Then there is what you have, your assets. I had a gentleman come up before, ask me, Ava, will I be able to protect a house? And of course, my answer was a very qualified, in the short term, yes, right? Because if you are a couple, you can protect the house you're in, and that'll be the next slide. In Ohio, though, you have to spend down to $2,000 worth of assets. You can, in the near term, maintain the home with what's called an intent to return, and you can keep one car as needed for medical transport. But here's something major, and that's going to continue to be major as we continue to move forward in time, because Ohio has now made firm that IRAs in payout status, that retirement accounts in payout status, are off the table for Medicaid eligibility. Now, again, that's fantastic news for families, that's fantastic news for especially community spouses, because that's a way of preserving assets for that community spouse to be able to live when the institutionalized spouse passes away, okay? So that is a big deal. Now, what do we do if we've received perhaps a tough diagnosis? What do we do if we're under the age of 72 and a half when we're required to take those minimum distributions? We put the accounts in payout status anyway. And Medicaid has said that even a small regular payout is enough to take that account off the table, which is fantastic. Now, here we are at the couple, right? Again, good public policy. If one spouse is in the facility in long-term care, we want the other spouse to be able to stay in the home, okay? And we don't want the family to have to spend down to the nubbin. So the community spouse can keep up to a cap of about $150,000, okay? What do we take off the table? Again, the house. What do we take off the table? A car. It can be the fanciest car you decide that you want to purchase. Pay down the mortgage on that house? Also, an excellent potential idea, right? And then those retirement accounts, again, in payout status. So, what do we do in a situation when we have to qualify someone for Medicaid in that crisis? What do we do when we have to spend down to that level? Because again, about $150,000 is the maximum that you can keep. Let's say all you have between you at the time Medicaid takes a snapshot of your finances is $150,000. Well, Ava, what's that snapshot? That snapshot is the first 30 consecutive days that you're in the hospital or that you're in the facility. Okay, so let's say at that point you haven't talked to a lawyer, you haven't pre-planned, you haven't said, oh, okay, I need to always make sure I have this much cash on hand so I can get the highest possible amount for my spouse to be able to keep. Well, at that point, we have it. So if you have $150,000, then you have to spend down to $75,000, right? And that goes all the way down to a cap of about $30,000. What can you spend your money on? You can spend your money on burial spaces, both single and couple. You can spend your money on prepaid funerals that are irrevocable, meaning you can't go back and change the contract. Again, you can spend money on the house. You can fix up the house. You can pay down debt. You can buy that new fancy car. But there's a cost. You know how I said, oh, we'll protect the house in the short term? Yes, great, wonderful. However, the cost is Medicaid estate recovery. Now, what is the deal that we make with our fellow citizens when we're asking our neighbor to pay for our care? We make the deal that we're going to spend on ourselves. We're not going to give our money away. Okay? And in exchange, then we can say, okay, neighbor, help me pay for my long-term care in the form of Medicaid. But the cost is estate recovery, which means the state will come after those assets that the institutionalized spouse had in their name at the time of their death. So, what is that potentially? For the singleton, that house that they had an intent to return to. Right? In the case of the couple, the Medicaid estate recovery doesn't happen until after the death of the community spouse, right? So let's say, in traditional terms, maybe the husband is in long-term care and the wife is the community spouse. The wife gets to keep living in the house. The wife gets to protect the house. The wife gets to protect the car. The wife gets to protect the money that she didn't have to spend down to. But after she is gone, then the state of Ohio can file a claim against the house. And that claim ultimately will get paid off after the house is sold. So that house that you wanted to pass on down to the kids, right, suddenly has this lien filed against it for the amount of care expended by the state of Ohio. And I will say, I promised I'd reference this, Ohio will go after what's left in the IRAs. So, do we know what that's going to look like? No, in fact, we don't. It's going to be the wild, wild west out there. But it is something to note that it's the comfort of knowing that I will have that resource. I will be able to live comfortably with that resource after the institutionalized spouse is gone. That's a great thing, okay? But it is something to note that if we're not getting assets out of the institutionalized spouse's name, then it can be subject to estate recovery. We talked about how we want to protect assets. So, what is one of those tools? Well, we can move that house to the wife, right? But what if the husband can't sign the deed? Then you need that strong financial power of attorney. What if we want to move that house to that child caregiver that is in the home? Then we need the strong financial power of attorney with the power to gift to the child. I talked about the trade-off, right? I talked about the trade-off of when I'm asking my neighbors to pay for my health care, what is my obligation to them? And what Medicaid says is you have to spend the money on yourselves. You can't turn around and give it to your kids. You can't turn around and give it to your loved ones. There's a cost in that you can't gift without being put in the penalty box. Dennison always makes a joke about if he got a tough diagnosis, what would he do with all of the money? He would take a cruise around the world. First class, stateroom, spend all of his money on himself, and on the last day, turn around, come home, and enter into the nursing home. And Medicaid would say, that's fine. Spend on yourself lavishly, but don't turn around and give it to someone else and then ask your neighbor to pay. What is the time period that Medicaid is going to be looking at your spending habits? That's the 5-year look back, okay? Medicaid is looking at all of your accounts going back 5 years from when you're applying, and they're saying, I need to make sure that you didn't give money away to the kids. So, what is a pickle that we often see in our practice? I have, let's say, $400,000, and it's 2021, okay? And I got that tough diagnosis, and I said, I know what road I'm going to face. I know I'm going to likely spend a lot of money on a facility, on long-term care. I'm going to give $100,000 to my kids. They deserve it. They should have something, right? Not the facility. And then I move into 2022. I've got $300,000 left, and I pay $100,000 for care. I move into 2023, and I pay another $100,000. And 2024 comes around, and I've spent my last $100,000. I'm now broke. Let's go apply for Medicaid. Well, what did I do with my money in 2021? I gave $100,000 to my kids. And Medicaid's going to be able to see that, and Medicaid is going to put me in a penalty box. What is the consequence of that penalty? In this case, the penalty is over a year of no Medicaid. And I better hope that my kids have kept that gift. Because otherwise, there's no money left to pay for me, right? I'm in the facility, I'm in the penalty box, Medicaid will not pay for me. At $7,500, a $100,000 gift is suddenly 13.3 months without any Medicaid. So the bigger the gift, the longer the penalty, right? I can't tell you how many families come into our doors and they're like, oh, we haven't gifted, except for that car that I gave my grandson, right? We haven't gifted, except for that money that I spent to give my daughter to fix up the downstairs bathroom so we could live downstairs. part of what we're doing is helping families through choices that have already been made, okay? What else can we do with money that we have to spend down to that threshold that I was talking about? What else can we do to get our loved one qualified for Medicaid? Well, we can do a couple of things. There are things called pooled trusts. We can use things called Medicaid-specific annuities. And if we have a longer runway than 5 years, shameless plug for advanced planning, then we can protect money for the family through things like a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. So what are pooled trusts? Again, just think of trusts like a box. Trusts, in this situation, are an allowable transfer, right, to this pooled trust, and you can use that pooled trust to pay for things that you need while you're in care. Now, what's the cost of that? Again, the state comes knocking at your door after you're gone, and they can seek recoupment for the money that they have been paid, or the money that has been expended for your care ahead of your heirs. But what is the positive? The positive is you draw funds out of that to buy a lift chair, to buy a computer, right? So you can Skype with that loved one across the pond. You can purchase an upgrade to a private room. Most people don't know Medicaid is only paying for a semi-private room in the context of long-term care. And there's a lot of people who've lived a very long time not wanting to go back to living with a roommate. What else can we do in the space of crisis planning? We can use Medicaid-specific annuities. These annuities are a tool to make that extra cash into a stream of income. And we can use that stream of income to deal with a gift penalty that we know we have coming because of that car, because of that bathroom remodel that we didn't appropriately document. We know we can use that annuity to maybe give something on purpose to the kids, right? We can draw the penalty ourselves and thus pass on a legacy to the next generation, but still have enough in reserve to pay through the penalty that we know that we're going to draw. Now, I see a lot of puzzled looks on everybody's faces, and I get that this stuff is pretty esoteric, right? But here's the deal. You don't need to worry about the math. That's our job, to worry about the math. What you need to think about is, do I want to put these powers into my documents? Do I want to have these conversations with my loved ones so that if I face a crisis, the family can get together and carry forward my wish, both of having me get the highest quality of care, having me get the private room that I want, but also to maybe pass something on to the next generation. So it's not all going maybe back to the state in a state recovery. So it's not all going to the facility in the form of payments. That's what you guys need to be thinking about. Well, Ava, you might ask, I don't think I'm gonna have this crash. I think I'm doing great. Okay, wonderful. Come talk to us still. We can make a plan to try to protect your assets for the next generation. We put it into a box, but this time, that box isn't changeable. It's an irrevocable Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. And what you're doing, again, is you're taking a bet. You're taking a bet that you're gonna make it past that 5-year look back. And if you succeed, everything in that trust is protected for the next generation, okay? Now, again, what are the details? How much should we put in? What should we put in? Is this even a good idea for us? That's an individualized determination that we help families make. But in this situation, we know that that bequest, right, that asset is protected if we succeed in making it past the look back. So, what are some other tips? Don't commingle assets. Don't reimburse loved ones without keeping receipts. This is my plug for the wonder that is my coworker, Leanne, who helps families untangle 5 years worth of bank statements and explain, oh, well, yes, that $1,500, that was, again, for me, not my child, even though it looks like it went to my child. What's an easy way to help prepare for that Medicaid application down the line? Treat your loved one like they're a business, right? Get a credit card. Have that be mom's credit card and put all of her expenses on that. So there's clear bank statements that you can have that says this is money expended for mom and for her care. What are some other great things that we can do? Well, there's something called the 2-year child caregiver rule. We can transfer a full house without penalty to a child that is in that home caring for the elder for a period of 2 years. What we need to prove, though, is again that the child lived there, right? And that, but for that child's care, the loved one would have been in a facility. So we're going to your doctor and we're saying, hey, did Judy keep you safe and out of a nursing facility for 2 years? Did Judy live with you that whole time? Then Judy can protect the house. And if it's up to Judy, if Judy wants to, she can then split the value of that house amongst her siblings. She doesn't have to, but she could. What if you have a disabled child? Again, good public policy. We want families to take care of their disabled loved ones. You can transfer that house to your child fully, so long as they are formally disabled. Now, there's a bit of a catch there, right? Because if we're doing that, great, we're taking care of the disabled loved one. But there's a risk that we then take them off their means-tested government benefits. And so again, you should be careful doing this because you wouldn't want to hurt your disabled child by giving them too many assets and kicking them off their benefits. How do we handle that? We handle that through special needs trusts. But what is the common thread of everything that I've talked to you about? Having that strong financial power of attorney. If you have that person that you trust, if you have that person that you know would carry out your wishes when you cannot, and critically, can they gift and can they self-deal? So, congratulations. We have made it to the finish line. Ava, what's happening now? Well, you're gone. You don't care. But truly, you do, because otherwise you wouldn't be talking to an elder lawyer at this event. If you die without a will, right, the state of Ohio decides where your assets go, right? And that typically follows your family. But what if you don't like your family? So that's a plug for, hey, maybe we should make a will. They give you a measure of control. They give your assets to who you want them to go, and in ways they can be used to protect things like minors. That being said, there are things that a will doesn't cover. Remember when I was talking about those beneficiary forms and going to check on those? Here's your reminder. We're circling back. Anything that passes by beneficiary form circumvents that. I'm going to cut through the illustration just to say, go check your forms, okay? Make sure if it's going down to your kids, then it's not just going down to your kids themselves, but their kids. Can you make a per stirpes designation on your form so it goes down to the grandkids level if, God forbid, something happens to one of your children? Now, what do we have besides wills? We've got trusts. And everyone's like, oh, Ava, those are for rich people. No, they're not, all right? Trusts make your loved one's life easier by avoiding the hassle that is probate court. Now, I know all of you are sitting here right now thinking, Ava, I'm worried about the federal estates tax sunsetting and going down to probably something around $5 or $6 million. We're not really worried about tax consequences at this point, but we might be worried about a spendthrift grandchild. We might be worried about a blended family. We might be worried about privacy. This is Dennison's favorite slide. Guess what? Marge Schott died with a will in Hamilton County. You can look it up on the probate court website, and you can see everything that she had. And the second I tell people that, they're like, oh, I didn't really think about it that way, Ava. Maybe I am more interested in getting a trust. Trusts are also appropriate for protecting those special needs children, right? And those are wonderful to use in conjunction with stable accounts, which lets disabled adults actually save for their futures. And finally, trusts, sometimes your trustee, usually also the same person that will advise should be your financial power of attorney agent, sometimes is seen as having more heft with a financial institution. So, how does this all fit together? Shameless plug again. The suits on the side do the legal work, and the amazing care team does the rest of the puzzle fitting. I am so proud to help families get through all of their journeys, whether it's from Parkinson's, whether it's from Alzheimer's, or any of the umbrella diagnoses, whether it's from reasons that they just come to us thinking, hey, I probably should plan for this. And the answer we always give them is, this is the gift that you're giving your loved ones by having these conversations with us. So, plan ahead, don't stick your head in the sand. And I know I've run a little bit long, but we got started a little bit late. And if you have any questions, I'll be at the table in the lovely atrium. And thank you so much for letting us present and for letting us join this wonderful, wonderful event. So.
I've been doing these spring forums now for either in person or virtually for 6 years. And this is maybe the first time that all of our speakers have been speaking about things pertinent to our lives, but not necessarily specifically to Parkinson's disease. So I hope that you found our speakers this morning informative. I know you're going to find Mike Hoffman from Marino Health Consulting informative as well. As we talked about, here's how expensive it all could be and where to move your money, but it's also important to understand how to navigate insurance and how that plays in and planning financially. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Mike Hoffman from Marino Health Consulting, and he'll help us understand insurance.
All right, so again, my name is Mike Hoffman, and I think this has been a fantastic forum. So congratulations and thanks for being here. I think this is how change happens. This has been a great event. And I'll start with a few familiar faces, hopefully. Hopefully you guys like Lucy and Charlie as much as I do. We have Lucy here. You guys can see this. Lucy here in her normal kind of doctor mode. And we, of course, have Charlie Brown, who's always questioning everything, but pretty gullible. You know, before we begin, I'd like to ask you something. What are your credentials, says Charlie Brown. Lucy says, I know everything. And Charlie says, well, hey, those are good credentials. Might as well listen. Right? And I bring that up because I don't know everything. I can tell you that the speakers before me, there were some fantastic bits of information that I got. So hopefully you all have learned something today. And what I would encourage you is these are just resources for you all. Okay, I am, the other speakers are. Use the advocates and the resources that are out there for you, okay? And I'll talk about that as I kind of go through my presentation. All right, so what are my credentials? Mike Hoffman, I'm an independent certified agent. My agency is Marino Health. Being independent, in my opinion, in the Medicare space is a valuable thing because you want to make sure, so when you hear independent and folks are working with Medicare, it means they aren't tied to any individual carrier or any type of product, okay? So I'm independent, I work with all the different carriers. I work with supplement plans, Part D plans, Part C plans, really all of them. I'm an econ major from Ohio State, behavioral science, and econometrics were my concentrations, 30 years of experience in finance and insurance, and I have a certificate in patient advocacy through University of Miami in Florida, which I do some of their Medicare presentations for their new students too, okay? Do that over the phone. So how I help folks, if you've stopped by my table, we've talked about it, but I provide, essentially I work with folks to help understand what their needs are. So I'll sit down and do a consultation. You know, do they have network needs? Do they travel? What are they comfortable with? We'll talk about how you pay for insurance, right? How the costs kind of come to you. and help make educated choices based on those discussions. Okay, so I present and review the options with them. We'll look at multiple providers and carriers. I do a lot of Medicare, but I'll also work with long-term care, whatever needs that person has. It's kind of the whole picture. So essentially, senior needs insurance is what I work in. And I'm ultimately an advocate for consumers, right? I want to make sure that you guys get what you need and get the help that you need. And that's true when a client calls me and they have a bill they don't understand. I mean, who's had that in the room, right? It's part of my job to help you know how to navigate that system. It's okay to ask questions. And I would encourage you, when you get a bill you don't understand, ask a question. Call the agent that worked with you on it. Call somebody that you know that's an advocate for you, okay? It's okay to call the insurance companies and ask them questions about a bill that you have. It's okay to appeal to. So I thought I'd start with the definition of insurance because we don't talk about it, like what insurance actually is very often. We're kind of used to it. But at the end of the day, the definition is a coverage by contract whereby one party undertakes to indemnify or guarantee another against loss or peril, contingency of peril. It's a long-winded definition. Essentially, we're protecting from that peril, right? We're protecting from something that's going to create danger. This person, this young lady's, looks fantastic, looks very happy on her skates. Is she potentially in peril? Right. So health insurance is probably good for her. She may fall, right? So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know the future. What about these folks? They look happy. But I can tell you right now, I have a 15-year-old who just started driving last week, and she's terrible, right? She has a lot to learn. And the first thing I tell her when I looked at this, these people are very happy. They're enjoying their joyride. But they're not looking at the road, right? There's a big peril there. So insurance is important, and we'll talk about Medicare. We'll talk about long-term care. We'll spend a few minutes to talk about each one of those pieces. But it's important because we don't know what's going to happen. We just want to make sure we have coverage, right? And coverage looks very different. We'll talk about Medicare because at the end of the day, it's not that complicated, but it's complicated enough that you need to talk through it, okay? And you need to understand what you have. Another bad day not to have health insurance. I think, and this is kind of a random one, but another bad day kind of caught me. So obviously whoever drew this was recognizing that bad days happen a lot, right? And that we need to have health insurance to protect from that. So of course this person's speeding, again with a young driver, also recognizing that you got to drive in a speed limit, but going to a bridge that's not finished. All right, so with Medicare, at the end of the day, I want us to be confident. I want us to know what we have and be comfortable with the decisions that we've made and where we're going. I can't tell you how many people I talk with who come to me because they don't know what they have. They might have been on Medicare for 10, 12 years, and they don't know what exactly they have and how it's structured and how it pays, okay? And often they'll know what their neighbor has. They'll hear something nice that their neighbor maybe is benefiting from, and they'll maybe jump into that without thinking about what they currently have and if it works for them, okay? So the more we know about insurance and about Medicare, the better. So let's get some confidence today. We'll talk about the basics. We'll talk about basic terminology. We'll talk about the enrollment periods because that's a big deal in Medicare. We'll talk about plan types and how to look at recommendations. And there's also cost assistance, which I thought the presentation before was fantastic. I've not heard that before. But there were a lot of good points by the elder law, like Eva from elder law. I thought that was a fantastic presentation. There's a lot of cost assistance that's out there, and I'll give you some of that as well. But just, again, be resourceful, use your resources out there. And again, the more we know, the easier making our plan choices and knowing how our coverage works is going to be. So what is Medicare? You guys could probably tell me this. It's a federal health insurance program. CMS is terminology we see a lot, right? You'll see that in the papers. You'll see that every time you see an increase in the Part B premium or anything else. That's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They run Medicare, so you're going to see those interchangeably used. And it's part of the Department of Health and Human Services. So there are a couple of slides in here that I want us to walk away. If you get anything from today, this is an important one, and hopefully you know a lot of this. But these are essentially the 4 ways that you pay inside health insurance. A premium, right? A premium is going to be typically something paid up front, paid monthly. It's usually a consistent payment, and at least for that period of time, that 12-month period. And we pay that up front, we get a benefit from that. That's one way to pay. Deductibles are another, right? Deductibles are a limit that you generally pay up to get a benefit, right? So once you hit that deductible, then the benefits start kicking in, or the lower rate kicks in. Copays, that's if you go to the doctor and you have a fixed payment that you pay. That's a copay. Coinsurance, which is an important one, because that's what Medicare is based on. We'll talk about original Medicare on the next slide, but coinsurance means you're paying 1%. Okay, so when you think about original Medicare, that's 80-20. They pay 80% of the cost, you pay 20%. That's generally the way it's designed. So we have those 4 ways are the way that payments are made in Medicare. So original Medicare, when I say that term to folks, they don't really know what it is. They just know they have A or B, or A and B. But original Medicare is A and B together. So when you're on A and B, that is original Medicare. And again, that goes to the 80-20, right? They're paying 80%, you're paying 20%. The challenge with that, and what we'll talk about on the coming slides, is there's no cap to that, right? So if you're in a hospital, you're going to pay 20%, and if you're in a hospital 2 or 3 times that year, there's no cap to that cost. Okay, so that's why it's important for us to think about that in a little more detail. What do these parts cover? Again, it's something that a lot of folks don't realize or know, but Part A is hospital insurance. I think we all probably have heard that. There's not a premium for that typically for most folks, although you can buy into it if you don't qualify for it. It helps pay inpatient hospital stays, skilled nursing, hospice, home health care. So all things that we'll use at some point, okay? But that is Part A. And then Part B, which I like to say is where we generally see care, use care more often. That's your preventative medicine, that's your doctor's visits to a local doctor, your primary care or specialist. That's outpatient care, home health care is included in that as well. Durable medical equipment, which would be canes, walkers, any devices that you would have to have that would fall under Part B as well. And then preventative medicine, vaccines are typically going to fall under Part B as well. And of course, Part B is the section that we would pay a premium for. Okay, and that premium, the standard, I'd say the lowest level would be that $164.90. That is great. That tiers up based on income. Okay, so I'd say the lowest cost of what most folks will pay would be that $164.90. If you have higher incomes, it could be higher than that. So original Medicare eligibility, I think most of us know this, but just to review it, 65 or older, it's important to note not everybody is over 65 that's on Medicare, right? You can be on disability by Social Security's definition, be on Medicare, and then actually when you turn 65, there's a window that opens to go in, as you're turning 65. You could have end-stage renal disease or ALS as well and qualify for Medicare. Be a citizen of the U.S. or be here for 5 consecutive years. So with original Medicare, we all know it doesn't cover everything, all right? Medicare covers a lot, but it does not cover everything. So there are ways, and again, we have that same issue with the coinsurance. There's no cap, so we have to have other considerations. And I'd say ultimately, this would be the key slide that I would want you to walk away remembering. There are really 3 ways to do Medicare, all right? And think about what you have today. So original Medicare, A and B, you get your red, white, and blue card. It's got your number on it. It's got the dates you came into A and B. And then you would potentially add a Part D plan. And that's what you're going to use to get your prescription drug benefit. Okay, and that's an important piece because if you delay that, that's where there's a penalty that can be associated with it. I run into people all the time that get A and B and do not get D because they're not taking a medication. I usually encourage looking at it because you want to make sure that eventually you may need it. So Medicare does not cover prescription drugs, so you want to make sure you have that coverage so you don't have to pay a higher rate later. So you have one. Option 2 would be similar. You have your A and B and your D, and you add the supplement plan on top of it. Okay? So you'll hear a G, an F plan, an N plan. You have all these different letters. That would be what we would, Medicare supplements would be Medigap, okay? That's intended to cover that 20%. That will cover your co-insurance part. So Medicare covers their 80%. The Medicare supplement or the gap would be the amount that you owe. So that's another way to do Medicare. And the third option would be a Medicare Advantage plan. And those are what we would consider Part C, okay? Part C is privatizing Medicare. So Medicare contracts with a local carrier or carrier in your zip code. They build a network and they offer benefits to you through that plan. And then those plans will typically have, so when you see the commercials on TV, who's seen a commercial on TV? Hopefully everybody has, because there's a lot of them. And I can't tell if those are good or not. But they will promote often dental benefits, hearing, vision. Those are extras that Part C plans will offer, okay? And they'll offer in a lot of different ways. So going through each one of these, Part D plans, you'll have specific, so they're not all the same, and there are the premiums can vary quite a bit. So it's really important to look at what you're taking and what your needs are and analyzing that to make sure that the plan you're in makes sense for you. Because I'd say of all the plan types, these are going to change the most year to year. Okay, formularies will change, premiums will change, the way the coverage is, the pharmacy coverage will change. So prescription drug benefits in Part D, I would make sure that you look at each year. But you'll have a specific list of drugs. Not all drugs are covered on every plan, right? So insulins can be offered typically, at the lowest rate, but it might not be the insulin that's on that formulary. So those are items that you want to make sure you're looking at. They're sold by private companies, so your Anthems, United Healthcare's, all the carriers are going to be offering these, and they're going to have monthly premiums that will generally be you'll never see more than 3 per carrier, and they'll usually be tiered. You have a kind of a higher cost, low cost in the middle, okay, from a premium standpoint. And then you have tiered copays. So, and some will have a deductible as well, which is important to look at because it may look like that deductible applies to you, but if your medications don't fall in those tiers, it won't. So again, an important thing to kind of look at. There are great tools. Medicare.gov is a good tool. I'm happy to look at it with anybody as well. But you're going to get your drug benefit through a standalone, or you're going to get it through a Part C plan. We'll talk about Part C plans. Then we had the second option where we had the original and we had D, and we added the supplement plan. So 14 million Americans are on Medicare supplement plans. That helps cover the costs and services that are, it helps cover your cost in original Medicare. That's the gap part of it. So it helps you cover the out-of-pocket expenses. It does have, if you're doing it today, you're going to have a Part B deductible. So you're going to have that portion, but in the end, it's again geared to help pay that percent for you, depending on what type of plan you go into. So, and the types are kind of nice because they're standardized across the country. So I would say an F plan in this state is going to be the same as an F plan in another state. So it's very portable. Now you may have a different rate if you move, and I run across those quite a bit, but you don't have to change plans, right? If you move from like maybe here to Indiana, or somebody moves from Michigan down here, you may have to change, and often you'll have to change your Part D, but you won't change your supplement. So they're very portable. Again, these are private companies. Premiums vary state to state, which is why when you move, you have to update the carrier that you've moved. And they can require underwriting. It's important to know when you first get Part B, you have a right to not go through underwriting to get guarantee issue. So that's an important piece to this puzzle, but that also doesn't exclude you from getting Medigap. So I run into folks all the time that are on a Part C plan, and they want to look at a Medigap. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of different supplement plans out there. You can always apply and see if they'll take you and see what the rate is, and then you can accept it or reject it, okay? So don't just assume because you go through underwriting you won't get what you want, okay? And they're often paired with, of course, original Medicare and a Part D plan, so you have full coverage, and you must be enrolled in Medicare A and B to be eligible. And then we have our Part C plans. So Part C plans, by design, are built to cover A and B benefits. So they're supposed to cover everything under A and B, at least at the same rate. And they cover prescription drugs as well. Many will. So we would call that an MAPD. And their premiums are going to generally vary quite a bit. Most that you'll see, shouldn't say most, but a good chunk that you see around town here will have zero premiums, which isn't necessarily free. You're paying your Part B, and you may have a low premium because of that too, right? You continue to pay Part B, and you can join a Part C plan and have a low premium if you have a premium at all on top of the Part B. You'll have an annual a max amount of pocket, and that's a fixed amount. That's not a deductible. That's an amount that as you make co-payments, that would be the cap that you'd have for that year. So it's a lot different than a deductible where you have to hit a certain limit before you get the benefit. People confuse that all the time. And they do have a network of doctors and hospitals, whereas the original Medicare and the supplement plan does not. Okay, so those anybody who accepts Medicare and original Medicare or the supplement, you would go get care and they would accept it. You have a network of doctors if you're in a Part C plan or an Advantage plan. Private companies, again, these are all typically guaranteed issue, which is an important piece. You don't ever go through underwriting. You can join a Medicare Advantage plan without going through answering any health questions, and they're not paired with supplement plans. Although I've seen that before, it's kind of crazy. But you're not supposed to pair these with a supplement plan, so you wouldn't have a supplement and a Part C, okay? And you must be enrolled in both Medicare A and B, and that's important because the Part B, you have to be making that payment, right? So the enrollment periods, which you guys hear a lot about because the commercials tend to time with those, right? You have the end of the year, which is the October 15th through December 7th. That's the annual election period. That's when everybody who's on Medicare can really make any choice. So if you're in a supplement plan, you can go to a Part C. If you're in a Part C plan or an MAPD, and a Med Advantage plan, you can go to a different Med Advantage plan. That's the time of year that everybody can make a change for the next year, okay? Which means plans, particularly the Part D and Part C plans, will change, and you'll start knowing what those changes are as you get into October, okay? So that's an important time of the year. That's something everybody tends to have some involvement in. Outside of that, there are really only a couple ways to get into Medicare. One would be your initial enrollment, which is 7 months, the month you turn 65, the 3 months before, the 3 months after. Okay, that's our IEP or our initial enrollment period. And again, these are important dates to know because if you're turning 65 or you know someone turning 65, there are certain rights that they get when they first come in that are just important for them to know. Then you have special enrollment periods. There's actually a lot of those. And I'll show us a few on the next page, but that could be moving from one county to another county. That could be moving from Toledo to Cincinnati, right? If you exit the area that you bought the plan, oftentimes that qualifies you to look at your plan again, okay? Because there may be different benefits. The prescription benefit may be different. There may be different pharmacies in that drug plan. So that opens up a window for you to look. If you're on Medicaid, or if you know people who are on Medicaid, they'll have special election periods throughout the year. So they can make changes throughout the year. And part of that's because their needs are different, and they also may change status more frequently. Then you have open enrollment, which is a period that you don't see marketed, but it's a period where people that are in Med Advantage plans can make changes. So we just ended that yesterday. So yesterday was a busy day. But that's the first part of the year, the first quarter of the year. People who are in a Med Advantage plan can change to another Med Advantage plan, or they can exit and go back to original Medicare. But very important because there's really no way to get into Medicare outside of these options. Special election periods, again, a few more reasons. So moved out of the area, Medicare and Medicaid, we would call that a dual eligible, dual special needs. Or if you currently retired, a lot of folks today continued working, right? They turned 65, they might have gotten A, but they may be interested in either continuing to work, but preparing to leave work. And you can leave your employer plan, and that opens up a window to join Medicare. So you sign up for Part B, exit your employer coverage, you're eligible under a special election, okay? That's a pretty common one right now, the last few years. And then, COBRA, when folks go on to COBRA, it's important to know that that's not considered credible coverage. So credible coverage is an important piece to it, because if you don't have credible coverage and you delay, you can have fines that kind of add up for continuing to delay. So it's an important piece too. So again, these are not things you're going to use very often, which is why when you have questions, just make sure you're using a resource. So for cost assistance, I think you've gotten some good presentations and some good information today about this. Again, I thought the presentation before me was fantastic in that sense. But there are a lot of programs out there, and I would encourage, there are a lot of programs, I see it every day. People just don't know what the options are, who's out there to help. But you have Extra Help, which is a service that can help with prescription benefits. You have the Medicare Savings Program that's designed to help you with Part B payments. You have Medicaid, which has several different tiers to it, depending on your income and your assets. And you have PACE, and you have a lot of local groups that are willing to help, including the groups you're with today. So just know that there are programs that are out there. If you have questions, don't assume that you aren't eligible for something or that there's nothing that can be done. Just talk to somebody about it, okay? So when looking at advice, and it's certainly as you get closer to the end of the year and you start working through the annual enrollment period, licensed insurance agents can be very helpful. And I'm a little biased, but to me, somebody who's local or regional, who you know or have access to or you trust, obviously are very important. But they have to be certified to offer, for everybody who's offering Part C and Part D plans, they have to be certified through Medicare, and they also have to certify with every group that they carry. So there's actually quite a bit of tests and quite a bit of work that goes into that. But they're trained to assist you with choosing plans. They certify every year. So these are things to ask your agent about or talk to your agent about. Lots of things impact which path you choose, whether you do a supplement of Part D or whether you do a Part C plan. That may be your budget, might be your doctors, might be whether you plan to be here or maybe relocate, whether you travel, where your kids are, that type of thing. Lots of things can go into that. That's why it's important just to talk through it with somebody. So let's talk about some special considerations and some special issues that come up for folks in the room and how it's covered. So coverage, hospital care, medication, these are all things that in the room we're dealing with, right? Hospital care, medication, home health care, DME or durable medical equipment, outpatient, all the specialists that folks might see, mental health services, training. There's some fantastic resources that are in the other room that deal with specifics for this group. Rehabilitation, skilled nursing, which tends to impact us all as well. Things that Medicare doesn't cover, and I guess the way I would delineate this is independent living, long-term care, nursing homes, but the custodial part, right? That's the part that tends to catch everybody up. And assisted living therapy that's not approved, right? So it's not medically necessary. Will tend to be out of pocket. So Medicare covers a lot, but it doesn't cover everything. It does have limits. And typically that limit would be if you require custodial care and you don't have skilled care associated with that. So how are these covered under Medicare? Hospital care, Part A. I should have quizzed you guys. Medication, Part D or your Part C plan, however you're getting your prescription benefit. Home health care, therapy, Part A if it's rehabilitation. It can be Part B as well. DME is going to fall under Part B. Outpatient, your specialist visits, your primary care, Part B. Mental health is going to be under Part B. Training and exercise facilities. So a lot of plans will offer, actually, a lot of folks don't realize this, but if you're in a supplement plan, you'll generally have, a lot of folks will have the option to have silver sneakers, or they'll have some type of benefit that will give them exercise, like not just a gym membership, but also access to tools or resources in their community. So it's important to look at that. So the plan that you have may offer above and beyond what Medicare offers. So training and exercise, some of those programs are built into that. So again, I encourage you to look at it. And then rehabilitation, skilled nursing. So an event happens and you need to get care, you need to recover, right? So that's covered under Part A. Medications, COMT inhibitors, MAO inhibitors, Part D or your Part C plan. Physical occupational therapy is going to fall under Part B. Testing, diagnostic testing, Part B. Any kind of therapy or stimulation tends to fall under that in a outpatient setting. It's going to be Part B. infusions. So coverage is limited though, right? We talked about that. Independent living, long-term care facilities, you're going to see a lot of the same ways that you pay for this. Private pay is that's generally going to be a factor of this. Even if you have a long-term care, there's typically a period of time you're going to have a private pay, and we'll talk about that. But independent living, long-term care, assisted living, and home health aids and therapy over and above maybe what's already been approved. Okay, so there are limits to what can be offered. Now, long-term care insurance, I thought we'd spend a few minutes talking about long-term care because that comes up a lot. And I think with long-term care, really any insurance, I think this is an interesting way to look at it. I'm afraid the policy won't kick in the next 30 seconds. So I can't tell you how often people come and look for long-term care insurance when they need it. And we all know that's not really how insurance works. So to me, long-term care is something you think about as early as there's a period of time that you want to really look at it to maximize the premium. But I find a lot of folks a lot of just basic education about what it is and what it isn't is helpful. And again, planning and considering it is probably the most important part. Otherwise, it can be very expensive. So what is long-term care and what is the product kind of built to do? So I won't read that full definition, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of different ways and facilities that can be offered through, right? Can be home, can be in an assisted living facility. At the end of the day, it's the custodial care part, right? So there's a trigger, which you see on the right there. It's a resource pool that's utilized when triggered, and it's triggered when an activity for daily living can't be met, when multiple activities for daily living can't be met. And that will tend to be the trigger for a policy, okay? And what that essentially is you pay your premiums for a period of time. That builds a resource pool that you then can use once that's triggered to pay for your care, right? I saw some of the numbers before. I know it's daunting. Earlier in the day, I saw some of the numbers. So the monthly stay can be very expensive. So these policies can help pay that. So they are designed to help with that with a specific need. They are very custom. So they're built for the individual, and that's why you want to talk to an agent about it if you're interested in doing this. You also want to make sure, of course, budget's an important part of it as well. But it pays for giving care under a variety of chronic health conditions, and again, the trigger would be the ADLs, and not being able to accomplish 2 or 3 of those. It kind of depends on the policy and the state. But they are very customizable. There's lots, and I'll show that on the next couple slides. But I would suggest that there are 3 ways that long-term care tends to be paid. Private always comes in at some level because there's usually a window up front that you'll do private pay, and then long-term care can kick in if you have it. And then Medicaid also covers a lot of long-term care in the country. And there was, again, can't stress enough, there were some very detailed, specific discussions in that last meeting that covered how to apply, how Medicare spend-down windows work. So from a consideration standpoint, on the right, you've got your long-term care insurance policy characteristics. Premiums are going to vary. This isn't a supplement plan where everybody's paying the same rate. They're going to vary based on how you change it or how you modify it. So premiums are generally going to vary person to person. They're not guaranteed issues, so there are generally health questions. And they do allow a lot of variation and customization. So considerations are going to be your budget, your health history, your family health history, what your fears are, what your concerns are for the long term, what your expectations are for care, where you want to get care. I think those are all things that when I sit down with somebody, we'll talk through. The estate, and again, so a lot of that was covered in the last session as well. But your plan for your family, right? Those are all pieces to this as well. So some of those variables and some of the definitions within long-term care, the reason why private pay comes in is that first point, deductible and elimination periods. So that's an insurance term I don't expect folks to know, but when you have a triggered event, that elimination period is going to be the period of your private paying before your policy kicks in. So that might be 90 days, might be 100 days, but you have a period where you're going to private pay until you get to that elimination period. And that feels a lot more like it feels like a deductible as well. And then your benefit period is the amount that you want to purchase. So the length of time. That could be 10 years, that could be 1 year, that could be 3 years. So those are all kind of variables that you have to consider. And so what I will say about long-term care insurance is it's not, folks often think they'll pay a premium and it'll just cover everything no matter where they are forever. And they're not really built to do that. It's built to give you a resource pool that you still have to make some decisions with. And it's usually for a period of time. Okay, it's not infinite. So that's, you'll pick that period when you sign up for a plan or when you do a plan. So beyond Medicare, lots of questions come up, especially because not everything is covered under Medicare, right? So a few questions that come up, and I'll give you a couple other examples of ways that I work with folks, or questions that come up that are maybe beyond traditional Medicare questions. So I'm sure people in the room have dealt with this. It's the most common complaint to Medicare. Medicare doesn't cover dental, what are my options, right? If you have a Part C plan, there's coverage that's offered a couple different ways in most of those plans. But if you have just original A and B, that doesn't cover dental cleanings and vision or hearing. You have a Medicare Advantage plan, but you have anxiety over inpatient stays, right? So if you've seen a Medicare Advantage plan, one of the higher copays is going to traditionally be the inpatient stay. Usually it'll be a couple days, and you'll pay a rate for a couple days, and then it gets covered. But that's a higher rate than people are usually used to paying. So that's a fear that people will have, is if that happens, I know it's lower than what it would be if I didn't have this plan, but what does it look like? That's a common fear. I'd like to provide some financial protection for my family. This comes up a lot. Comes up a lot with final expense planning. And I'm retiring, but I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. Get that one a lot as well. If I go to the hospital, I want to recover in the comfort of my home. And I want the resources to do that. I want to be able to, I don't know how much custodial care I'll need. I want help just with an aid that I know is going to be above and beyond Medicare. If I need long-term care, at some point, how do I pay for it? Right, so all very common. So I have them all here. I'd like to provide some financial protection for my family. Life insurance, right? Believe it or not, life insurance comes up a lot. And it comes up a lot on the final expense side, right? People don't want to leave a debt. They don't want their children to pay for it. I'm retired, I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. An annuity, right? Annuities are an option that people could have for that. Dental care, there is dental insurance. And dental insurance can vary quite a bit. But in the end, a lot of folks want to have cleanings. And so dental care, if anybody's ever had to use it, once you go to the dentist and you have a need, it gets very expensive very quick. So dental care can be dental insurance can actually be a very helpful thing. I worry about how I'm going to pay for assisted living. We talked about that one, long-term care insurance. Medicare Advantage plan, anxiety about inpatient hospital stays. There are indemnity plans for hospital stays. So the ways those are designed are if folks have a Part C plan and they know what that fixed amount's going to look like for that plan, they can actually purchase, really for a pretty reasonable premium, a plan that pays that. So kind of like a long-term care policy, when the event happens, it triggers it, and they get indemnified, they get cash payments. The idea there is it's going to help them pay for other care that they might need. And then kind of the same thing with recovering in your home. That was the last one. There's short-term home care that works the same way. So if an event triggers it, there's an indemnified payment or a payment that comes to that person, and that helps cover those costs, okay? So it gives them some insurance about some assurance about what their costs will look like and how they'll do it. So with that, I will, I don't know if we're taking questions now or if we're going to do a panel, but. Okay.
Okay. Once you become 65, do you have to reapply for your Medicare, or does that automatically roll over? Are you in that 3-month lock-in period, or?
Yeah, you do have the option once you turn 65. It does open up a window, right? So you actually become eligible under age. So you have the option then to get a supplement plan. You don't need to reapply, but it does offer you that opportunity. Yes, it was about whether there's a lifetime limit to what you can spend. So if it's medically necessary, there's a way to have it covered under Medicare.
Can
Yes.
you speak to the wisdom of prior to turning 65 and someone's on Medicare, we were never able to get a supplemental policy, so we were forever paying exorbitant fees. What's the wisdom behind that? Why do they not allow purchasing
Oh, supplementals.
some kind of supplemental insurance?
Yeah, and that's actually a state to state. In this state, there are no supplement plans for folks under 65. It's a risk pooling. What I will say is when you do turn 65, you have that option to get one. People don't realize that, but you do have the option to qualify then. So that's an important piece. And I agree with you. It would be nice if you had that. I think it's a risk pool piece, right? I mean, and all insurance is kind of built on that same principle. You pool risks together, and that's how everything kind of gets covered. If it was for folks that are under 65, they're on Medicare, it's going to be a high expense typically. So I think that's what the states. It just wouldn't be viable. Let me put it that way. It's a good question. It's an excellent question. And so the issue that he's referring to, which actually got done literally at the last hour, like the last 4 hours. If you're in a Part C plan, you have a network. So you have a network of doctors that you have to work with. There was recently Anthem and Christ Hospital Network couldn't come to terms on the payments. So in that case, they were going to fall off as of today. And to answer your question, there's not actually a reason. You can't just go in because of that. That being said, the timing's built around the initial window or the open enrollment window. So open enrollment's from January 1st to March 31st. And so I did have a few folks kind of move out for that because they were nervous. And in those cases, you can use that open enrollment window. So if anybody who's in an MAP, that's part of why that's there. If someone's in a Part C plan and that network changes, or they saw a commercial on TV and they bought it based on the commercial, and they didn't kind of look at whether it made sense for them, and they find out, hey, a drug's not on this plan, my network isn't what I thought it would be, or my doctor's not a network. There's a way for them to make that change right now. And so yesterday would have been the last day to do that. So a lot of the timing was built around that, I'm sure. But it's a good point. It almost feels like if that happens and it's so late, that would open up a window, but it does not.
Patients with Parkinson's disease who have not purchased a long-term care plan. I mean, it just kind of the diagnosis happened. Is it too late for them to buy an affordable long-term care plan?
Tends to be, just because, again, you'll go through underwriting. So since you do go through underwriting, it will tend to increase the premium. But again, what I would suggest is look at the resources in your community, because you don't always have to qualify for Medicaid to get certain help. So use those resources, just use the state programs and see if there's a way that you can get help. So I would encourage that. But from a policy standpoint, again, since there is underwriting, if you've already kind of qualified, that would generally have a higher premium or disqualify you. Again, if I can leave you with any words of wisdom, it would be leverage the resources, not just that are here today, but just become aware of what's available in your community and work with folks to kind of build your advocacy network. That is so important in healthcare. This is not easy stuff to understand. It's not stuff you have to kind of use every day. So use the experts and find people that you trust to advocate for you. Okay? Thank you.
I did want to introduce Mary Kamp and Nicole Hershey from CB Moves for Parkinson's. They'll tell you a little bit about their organization, but they have partnered with the Dance for Parkinson's and the Cincinnati Ballet to extend this program. And it's exciting news. We're so excited to have you here today to introduce this to our community. And if you will, Mary and Nicole.
We are thrilled to be here with you today to give you just a taste of a typical CB Moves for Parkinson's class. We offer a specialized dance class designed uniquely for persons with Parkinson's. Over 12 years ago, our own Elizabeth Grover, who I think most of you know, was the catalyst for bringing Dance for PD to Cincinnati. Our parent organization in New York City, Dance for PD, is celebrating more than 20 years of this new program. There are, at this time, more than 300 classes around the world on 7 different continents. Founding instructors Kate Stark, who many of you know, Nancy Fountain, and myself, Mary Kamp, we started about 12 years ago, as I said. Since we moved to Cincinnati Ballet, we've added 2 new instructors, Donna Grisey and Nicole Hershey, who's here with me today. A typical class, which is an hour and 15 minutes, has a seated portion, a few ballet bar exercises, maybe, and some movements across the floor. We are at Cincinnati Ballet, but we do more than just ballet. In addition to ballet, you can have a class that has musical theater, jazz dance, narratives, improvisations, tap, ballroom, which is Kate's specialty, and of course, some ballet. We also have a vocal music component. We have a pianist who plays for most of every class, and she works on increasing your vocal voice as well as your breathing technique. One of the most important things in every single class, though, is community, and we have fun. We laugh at almost everything in class. We have such a good time. So today we're going to share the sun salutation and a narrative, and then I'm going to work on a program that I just named. It's called Did I Say That? This is so much fun. We always enjoy it. Also, I brought, we'll have some of these CB Moves rack cards that are out on the table, the support table, Parkinson's Wellness and Support. And you can pick one of these up. It'll tell you a little bit more about our program. So, Nicole, it's your turn.
All right. I am going to encourage you, if you would like to participate, to scooch a little bit away from your table or your neighbors so you hopefully have enough room to put your arms out to the side. And if it's a little tight, that looks great. Good job, everybody. Okay, my plan for today, I am going to talk through these exercises, teach you what is coming up, and then we'll put it to music and do it together. I'll still talk you through it because this is not a test. It's supposed to be fun. So we'll do that. We are going to start, if you're able. I'm very short, so I need to scooch towards the edge of my chair so that my feet are flat on the floor and my spine is as straight as I can be. And we're gonna start with 2, we call these chin smiles. Turn your head to one side and imagine that you have a paintbrush on the tip of your chin and draw a little smile face, like a half circle. And then come back to the center. And then do that the other way. Turn your head to the side, draw a half circle, and then back to the front. Good, so we'll do 2 of those. And then we have 2 sun salutations. Bring your arms out to the side, scooping up like a big circle. Press your palms together at the top and pull them down towards your chest. And then reverse that. So going up to the center and float the arms down. Wonderful. Do that one more time. Scoop the arms up, press the palms together, pull them down, and then bring them up and float the arms down. Very good. Then we do 2, it's kind of like you snake through your spine. You make this kind of shape. So I'm gonna tuck my chin to my chest and let my nose come down and then forward like you're a mermaid, like splashing up over the rock. And then reverse that. So chin leads you down and then the back of your head leads you up. Anything you do to like snake your spine will be good. Let's try that again. Chin to chest, rolling part way down, and then nose leads you up as you splash over a rock, and reverse it. Chin leads you down, and back of the head leads you up. Very good, everyone. We'll twist side to side next. So stretching your arms wide, pick one direction to twist. Stretching as far out to the front as you can, twist the other way. And then back to the center, float the arms down. The music we are going to use is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So our very last move, we're gonna make a rainbow with your arm. Pick one arm, take it across your body, and make a big rainbow behind your body. Yes, I'm kind of going on the diagonal. Try the other arm. Cross the body, big stretch, up and over. Very good, and then we'll repeat the whole thing. All right, let's try it with music. I will continue to talk you through it, so we're ready. We start with our chin smiles. Here we go. Looking side and draw a smile down. And back to center, other way. Side, drawing the smile down. And back to center. Good. Sun salutation, big scoop up through the sides, pressing the palms together, and reverse up high, float the arms down, scoop, pressing the palms, and up, float the arms down. Here's our mermaid moment, chin to chest, and nose leads you up. Very nice. Reverse it. Stacking the spine. Try it one more time. Chin to chest. Nose leads you up. And chin leads you down. Back of the head leads you up. Very nice. Twisting to the side, reaching your fingers wide. And stretching forward and twist to the other side. And coming back center, arms come down. Pick an arm, go across your body, and draw a big rainbow. Other side, across your body, big rainbow. Very nice. Let's repeat the whole thing. Chin smiles, looking to the side, down, and back to center, other way, side, drawing your smile. Good. Two sun salutations, scooping up, pressing the palms, up, and float the arms down. One more time, scoop, and press, and up, and float. Here's our mermaid moment, chin to chest, up over the rock, and down. Stacking the spine, one more time, chin to chest. Nose leads you up, chin leads you down, back of the head leads you up again. Let's twist to one side. And reaching those fingers long across, twisting to the other side. And back to the center, float the arms down. Two rainbows going all the way across the body. Drawing that rainbow with your fingers. Other way across the body, drawing a big diagonal. Very nice. Let's roll the shoulders back. Lovely, good job. All right, our next exercise, we call this a narrative exercise. There's not specific choreography to this, so you have full permission to use your own creativity. I will give you some guidelines along the way. We are going to have an adventure day on the beach. And I'll tell you, I grew up in Iowa in the middle of cornfields, and I've only been to the beach like one time in my life. So if I'm not doing it right, you have to teach me how to go to the beach, okay? So we're gonna play the song Under the Sea. I'll talk you through my plan. We're gonna walk to the beach. We're gonna put on some sunscreen. We're gonna play some beach ball. Is that what you call it? Volleyball on the beach? Yes. We're gonna go out into the water. We're gonna maybe try surfing. I've never done that before. And then we'll walk home. And if you wanna add your own things, feel free, because it's your adventure day at the beach. So let's go ahead. We can play the music, and I will talk you through my suggestions as we go. It'll be great. I'm gonna turn this over. All right, we're gonna start walking to the beach. So take one heel forward, stretching forward, and pull it in. Other side, stretching that heel forward, pull it in. 2 more times. Stretching that heel forward, pull it in, and stretching that heel forward, and pull it in. Let's look for a spot to put our blanket. Do you see a good one yet? I don't know, maybe right there. I'm gonna stretch my blanket, put it down, lay it flat. We've got to put on our sunscreen, so really slather it up all over. If you know your neighbor, you could help out your neighbor. Make sure you get the tip of your nose, the tops of your ears, tops of your feet. All right, let's pull out your volleyball and see if you can find somebody to pass it to. Make eye contact with somebody in the room. See if you can volley back and forth. Good. Very nice. All right, I want to go looking for seashells now. Let's see. Maybe find one, pick it up, hold it up to the light. I don't know, do you put it in your pocket? Do you throw it back because it's not pretty enough? Maybe one more. I like that one, I'm gonna keep that one. All right, it's time to go in the water. I like to tiptoe into the water because it might be really cold. Maybe you wanna run in the water. Mary's gonna run in the water. All right, in the water now, I'm gonna splash my friend. Splash. All right, wade out a little further. I like to float in the water. I'm not a very good swimmer, so I stay where I can just float. But maybe you want to backstroke, front stroke. I see some treading water in the back. That's great. All right, let's paddle out and try surfing. I don't know how to do this. I think we paddle like this. And then do we, yeah, there it is. Do we stand? If you want to stand, you can try standing. Or we can just, I don't know, do this. Yeah, very nice. Do you fall off? Is there a big wave? Do you just sail all the way back to the beach? Good. All right, let's walk back to our towel, our blanket that we laid out. Oh, and I'm gonna take a nap on the beach after that long adventure day. Very good, everybody. We have one more exercise for you, and Mary is going to lead you through that one.
This is one that we have the most fun with. And I want to encourage you to use your facial expressions and your voice. There's 4 words. The words are
Hold it a little closer.
why, quiet, and ha-ha. You can say those any way you want to another person. So we're gonna show you how to do this. Oh,
Why? Shh. Ha ha.
Why?
Oh.
Oh?
Oh.
Okay. So, the words are oh, why, quiet, and you can do shh instead of quiet. It depends on how you want to do it. And ha-ha can be any way you want to laugh. So, we're just going to go around the room, and each table can do their own. You can say that, you can go around the table individually, or you can just say to a person across from you, if you know them, look at them and say, ha-ha. And we'll just go. Have fun with it. You can use whatever words you start with those four. Use whichever ones you want.
I think they got it.
I see that everyone has the idea. We go on and on with this, and the group that the Monday group that I teach, they have added sentences. They've added, it's kind of an endless game. There's no particular time to it. You just get started. Everyone did such a wonderful job. Thank you so much for having us today. We really enjoyed you.
I want to thank everybody for giving us your Saturday. Thank you so much. We thank you for all the support that you give to the Parkinson's community. And we'll see you at Steady Strides, September 30th. Come on, you got to be there. It's fun. Thanks very much. Bye now.